Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing out there? It is middle of February now, but it's lots of snow on the ground. I think it's going to start melting soon. And we're starting to announce some shows for the spring, so that's exciting. You know, there's not a whole lot. It's going to be just a few weekends here and there. No tours per se, 2 or 3 nights in the same place just on a weekend, but we do have some announced now, so that's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Better than nothing, right? Um, I had some people, some patrons, if you will. I had some patrons ask me if I would discuss how we compose, or not necessarily compose, but how we approach the drum solos in Dark Star. And it's a great question with a fairly long-winded explanation. I'll try and keep it succinct. But firstly, it really matters what kind of drum solo we're talking about. Whether we're doing a Grateful Dead show and what era the show is it an elective show? What equipment do we have? So, let's start with the Grateful Dead show. So let's say it's a Grateful Dead show in the '70s. Two drummer, I guess. That's really a short period. That's like '76 to when Brent joins in '79, where it's mostly just drum kits. There might be some extra percussion for the family fun, like the Red Rocks thing we showed you. But by and large, those are just drum kits with a little bit of maybe a couple extra instruments. And those we don't really talk about too much. We may listen to them. If we do, we listen separately. We never listen to things together unless there's something we can't agree on. But for those shows, we just kind of maybe hear maybe hear what the groove is, where they're starting from. Is it spacey, is it tribal? But that's about it, if that much. We just kind of go and play and do our thing. We kind of have to tell the band how long we think. We'll say what's tonight's drums, and we'll say it's 4 minutes, it's 6 minutes, it's 15 minutes, just to keep them from leaving us out there too long. So then when you get into the beast stuff, which is like '79 on, they start adding different versions of it with different big drums and the beam, and then later on some MIDI, electronics and stuff. But on those, again, we'll listen separately, and then we'll come and talk about it at sound check. And all we really talk about is where the textures we're going to use, where we're going to be, how basically our movement throughout the setup. Again, usually those drum solos start with drum kits only and then kind of evolve to the back. So we don't talk about the kit section. We might just say, hey, tonight's drums, it's kits together, and then I'm going to be on the big three, and you're going to stay on the kit. And then the next section is rototoms and congas. We might talk about that kind of stuff, where we're going to move, but we really don't talk too much about what we're actually going to play. We just go and do it, and that way it's still fresh. It's definitely our most creative part of the night, so we don't want to put any structure in there if we don't have to. When you throw in the MIDI, as it gets a little later, and you throw in all the electronics, then we have to start being a little more, I don't want to say choreographed. We have to talk about it a little more, though. What sounds we'll be using, if anything's pre-programmed, making sure that it's all set and it's in good time, and both of us can hear it and know what we're going to play against it or with it. So there's a little bit more structure there, but again, we don't really talk about what we're physically going to play in the moment. It's setup stuff on that as well. And I guess that goes for the electives too, because in the elective shows, we don't usually use the beast. We used to use it all, but we're getting older, and the beast is kind of hard on the shoulders sometimes. So we'll set up the kits and our MIDI and the beam back there. And with those, we might set up a lot of extra MIDI, things that we wouldn't use with the Grateful Dead. I'll use a whole lot more of my loop pedals and all that I showed you in those videos. And Dino had his Ableton set up. The video where I walked everybody around the drum set, you can go look at that and see that was during an elective. So those we'll talk about a lot more. But again, it's about programming, because a lot of times we'll make loops ahead of time, and he'll make one and I'll make one. A lot of those drum solos will start when we get to that point where we're using the MIDI. Sometimes it's at the beginning right away, sometimes it's after a drum kit section. But where we get to that point, usually I go there first more often than not, and I'll start a loop that I've either made already that he's heard, or I like to make them on the fly. I'd rather just have it be organic and make it as I go, maybe have some sounds ready that I'm going to use. The risk of that is not doing it very well. I'm not Keller Williams. I'm not amazing with the loop pedal like he is. So it might not be in perfect time, and then you can't play along to it, and I have to stop it and start it over. So, sometimes I'll just pre-program it. So we'll do a section where maybe my loop is happening, so Dino needs to hear it and at least have a tempo. Because he'll have some pre-programmed loops ready to go also, and we try and transition into his for the next section of the drums. So if in a perfect world the tempos will line up and we can just seamlessly float, my loop out and his loop comes in, and all the while we're changing the textures that we're playing over and under that. And then a lot of times once his loop comes in, if his is, it depends on what he's programmed. A lot of times on the electives, he'll put in the loop that he's programmed, and he'll play an electronic drum kit that he sets up, and he'll play mostly drum kit style stuff. So I rarely go back to the kit, but I do sometimes. If I do, it's going to be like the lower drums to get him some bottom end. But normally, I'll hear what's going on over there, and if the mood strikes me, I'll find, if the loop is more of a repetitive thing, I might find a melody sound that's in a different register. So if it's a low sounding loop, I'll find a bright set of bells or a bright balafone or some kind of sound like that and play a melody over it. It also depends on what's happening with the bass line, because we got to make sure we're in the same key if I'm going to play a melody. And if that's not happening, a lot of times I'll go to the beam and lay down. If his isn't real bottom heavy, if the loop's not real bottom heavy, I'll go to the beam and start a delay that kind of lines up with the MIDI and bring in a bottom end, boom, 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 or something like that. I don't want to do that if the loop already has a bunch of bass in it, because it just gets muddy and doesn't really translate to the crowd. So again, it's a lot less composing what we're going to play. It's more of the thought process of how we're going to do it, and then it happens. And then the last one is the one drummer stuff. Like if Dino or I are doing a one drummer show that has a drum solo in it, on those I might listen to the drum solo that he does, but not try and play like that. But on those, I don't construct anything, and a lot of times I don't even listen to it. I just know, hey, it's coming out of the other one, so it might have that. So it might have that triplet feel, so the solo might stay in that. Anything that might be straight, it'll have more of a kind of groove to it. But for the one drummers, that's total freedom. As much freedom as Dino and I have when we play together. When it's when you're soloing by yourself, I don't want to have any preconceived notions when I go out there. A lot of times, a lot of people, and this is nothing wrong with this, a lot of people will compose their solo, or at least compose a framework to go over. For me, it's usually going to be whatever song it's coming out of, and that'll be maybe going in my head, and I'll play around the melody a little on the kit. But I just play. I just want to play and see what comes out. And the difference between that and composing something is you're flying by the seat of your pants, so you're challenging yourself in a different way. But the biggest difference is, if you have a somewhat well thought out solo or a composed solo, you're going to be safe. I've had plenty of nights where I've gone out there and had nothing in my head and just sucked and finished the solo and thought it was terrible. So, by and large, the best way for me to do that and feel comfortable is come up with a theme at the beginning. Whatever comes out right at the beginning of the solo will be my theme, and I'll play with that. And then I might vary away from it and change the groove or change the tempo or the dynamics. But always kind of have that theme in my head, and then towards the end of the solo, recap and bring that theme back in. On the one drummer, a lot of times it's in the middle of the other one. So, the theme might start with that triplet groove, the 12/8, and then it can go anywhere it wants, whether I keep it in the 12/8 or whether it goes into a space thing, like the other one or Dark Star. There's no rules. I can do what I want. But as the solo is starting to come to an end, which is usually cued by them starting to walk back on stage, I got to kind of get back there so we can come back into the other one. Yeah, you know, sometimes when they come out on stage, we're not ready for them to come yet, and we've still got more to say, and you know, and whether it's one drummer or two, just in general. And there's other nights where I'm looking over at the side of the stage, and Dino's looking at his side, and I'll finally see Jeff or somebody and go, "Come on, come on, it's time. We've had enough. You know, we're out of things to say without feeling like we're just babbling, if you will, or redoing what we've already done." Yeah, so that's the long and short of it. I hope that wasn't too long-winded of an answer to the question, you guys who asked me that, and I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you have any more questions about it, I'd be happy to talk to you. So send me a comment, and we can have a discussion. Yeah, that's how the drum solos work. So thank you all for your patronage. I really appreciate it. Keep it up, and tell your friends.